Take a look at this, and this. All this art has bright bold colors, blinding blue skies, and a ton of fantasy. Artwork like these just has an otherworldly feel to it, and somehow has the power to bring me somewhere else. I like anime pop art, which is what I decided to call this, a lot more than grounded artworks, which sometimes feels boring and mundane. I mean, where's the color, the creativity, the energy, the fantasy, and the adventure? And that's why I love Rush Garcia, an orchestration channel on YouTube. His future bass orchestrations are just amazing, and sometimes they mix perfectly with some of the artworks that he chooses for his songs. One of my personal favorites is his version of Surf, which is playing right now, and has this amazing artwork as its cover. There's just something incredibly special about this perfect mix of visuals and music that I can't explain in words. All I know is that this is exactly what pop anime art is, in my mind at least, and I think the only way for you to understand is to give it a quick listen. Is that what drugs feel like? Because honestly, I wish that I could make an anime with an OST just like this in the near future. But of course, for now, that's impossible. What is possible, however, is making something with my current skills that can reflect my ideas of pop anime art. And I think the best way to do this is to make an anime figure. This is because making an anime figure is the same as making a character, and making a character is the best way to put a bunch of ideas and beliefs and style into something that people really love. This will be the second anime figure on my channel, and I'm really excited to pour so much passion and ideas into a project like this. But I'm also kind of scared because when you make an anime figure, you have to design the character, then 3D model the character, then 3D print the character, and then paint the character to finish an anime figure. And that's a very daunting task. But with music like this, I feel like that I can do anything. And isn't that the beauty of art? This anime figure was made for AP art in my senior year, and if you understand what that means, let it sink in for a bit. Anyways, the first thing to do is to obviously design the figure, and I'm actually going to be smart like a professional and draw the figure out in order to design it. I wanted to make a character that looked something like this, which was the thumbnail for Bubble Tea by Rush Garcia. And by the way, all of Rush's music and links are in the description below. And don't worry, this isn't sponsored or anything, I just love his work. But as for the artist that drew this piece, I have no idea who made it. So in order to create a character that reminds me of a certain type of music, obviously I'm gonna make them a musician. So similar to the reference, I wanted to give her some sort of instrument. I googled bubble horn on the internet and found this, which I'm not really complaining. As for her outfit, which correlates to her personality, I wanted her to be a more carefree, energetic, and pop type of character. And what better way than to choose some popular clothing? Pop culture probably relates to pop anime art, or whatever pop means. So I got some jeans, sneakers, small backpacks, bracelets, and this hat, which was supposed to represent like a baseball cap, but I didn't want a baseball cap because everyone wears a goddamn baseball cap. So I got this cool hat that I found at some Chinese market, and I think it's pretty cool to put a real item that I have onto a character that I'm designing. Since I wanted a lot of color variation, each piece of clothing is somewhat a different color, but blue takes up the majority because bright blue skies reminds me of freedom. As you can see, there's no brown, gray, black, or any grounded earthy colors in the character because this character is meant to be something that is otherworldly. Here is the finished design sheet, and I think it looks really good actually. This is one of the first times I've ever put effort into designing a character, and I think it turned out great. I really like the cohesiveness of the color scheme and how unique the clothing is compared to any other characters I see. These hair buns are made to look circular to reflect the curvy nature of the character. No, not that, but shape language. Wait a minute. These are all things to think about when designing an original character. As for the poses, we'll get to that later. The next step is to 3D model the figure of the character. And this is my second anime figure that I've ever made. My first being Barbara, which got like no views, so if you want to watch it, please check it out. But since you missed that video, my basic process is to 3D model a character and then pose it digitally to make the figure. Right now I'm in Blender, a free and popular 3D modeling software, which means anyone can learn to make anime figures. I first got a random anime girl base mesh and started dividing it up on certain major parts of the body to make it easier to print later on. Here I can also adjust the size and proportions of the character, which I decided to make her a little taller than normal because she's white. Is that racist? No, I don't think that's racist. By expanding or splitting parts of the body, you can make clothing like socks or jackets. However, for items like shoes, you can just download them off the internet to save some time. 3D modeling isn't actually that hard if you're smart and keep everything simple. I keep everything at a low poly count so everything can be easily adjusted. You just have to look at modeling objects as simple shapes, such as this backpack, which is just a simple curved square, and this horn, which you could just trace out. At this point, I finished the basic mesh of the character, which doesn't have any details and is under a simple A pose. I wanted to pose it before I added details because that would make everything kind of messy and laggy. Posing is sometimes really horrifying, but it is easy, and I was watching a tutorial while doing it. The only issue is that the pose that I designed is kind of, well, bad in my opinion. In hindsight, I think the pose is a little unnatural, like who the hell puts their legs like this? And it is also a side profile, so I think I could have done a lot better to exemplify the character. Too bad I can't do anything about that now. The order of events kinda gets messy right now, and I decided to detail and model some of the extra pieces in order to properly pose them on in the future. This involves sculpting and smoothing out the low poly mesh to make it more high poly. And this is why I pose the figure before detailing, because if I try to pose a high poly mesh, it'll probably destroy my computer. So detailing, smoothing, sculpting, and all that polishing is done after the posing.
どこ見てんだよ。
Sculpting and detailing is really what makes the figure look professionally made, and luckily the resin printer can capture it all. Though most of the time it's just smoothing things out because the figure isn't actually that complicated, it's just a normal girl. Sculpting is actually pretty easy because you're just making a valley or a hill to alter the shape into what you want. And it's pretty fun knowing that all this detail can be seen later in real life. When all the modeling and detailing is finished, I had to do the step of actually getting the model ready for 3D printing. I had to make sure that all of the pieces of the model were a solid shape and that they could fit together with pegs when I 3D printed them. The final step is making the base for the character. The last time I made a base, I got lazy and I just made a white, flat base. So I decided to put much more effort into it by making it a cloud, added some stars and balloons, and hopefully the cloud looks good as a solid object instead of, water vapor? I'm actually pretty proud of the finished product because it looks pretty accurate to the drawings I made. It's not every day you see 2D go to 3D this well. All that's left is to bring it to reality. For actually bringing the figure to life, I used a resin 3D printer. This makes much better prints with amazing quality, and it's very satisfying to see a digital design be created perfectly into a physical object. Like, look at this quality. Oh my goodness. Of course, reality always has some more issues than the digital realm. And for one, I kind of designed this foolishly, making the head and shirt piece having to squeeze through the jacket to fit in. There's also tons of issues formed by printing and supports, so that's what sanding is for. Painting is the fun part, making some gray turn into some color. Since I only earn $1 a day from YouTube, I painted this figure with some old paintbrushes and 50-cent acrylic paints. But it actually isn't that bad, I think. I don't know, I'm still improving as a beginner, but I don't really think I need to act like a professional if I'm a beginner anyways. Base coating was done with thin coats of paint to get a smooth surface, and it's just like a coloring book. It's pretty fun while listening to some good old music from Rush. Then, repeating the same simple principles from 3D modeling, detailing was done, and this is what makes the figure look good, adding artificial shading and highlights to the figure. I realized it was kind of a pain to paint the figure in separate pieces because I couldn't visualize the whole entire figure together. So I decided to start gluing them together with some super glue, and this is where my inexperience started to show. The model is actually kind of difficult to assemble. Some parts were definitely too tight and even broke when I tried to force it. Some parts, like the legs and socks, had absolutely no reason to be divided up other than that they were different colors. The worst was the jacket and the body. I mean, look at how much pressure I'm putting into this poor woman. I'll definitely try to improve on this in future models. Actually, the horn was probably the worst thing because why would I think that connecting two arms onto a jacket, then connecting it onto a horn would perfectly line up to her lips? That's stupid. Why is the horn on her forehead? Well, resin printers can't print everything perfectly, so I had to commit some crimes. I really like the design of the horn, even though it's heavily inspired. It looks pretty fun and fantastical, but fitting it on was so stressful that it broke, and it was too late for a reprint. Sometimes an artist has to settle for imperfections. Once assembled, you can really see how reality can't really compete with digital in the color space. The vibe is different and the lighting in reality changes the colors wherever you go, so maybe anime girls in real life might not be what everyone actually wants. Now working on the figure feels a lot better instead of trying to paint on different puzzle pieces. I realized that the colors may have been a little too dull, so I started adding more highlights on a lot of the parts. When I was fully satisfied, I went outside for the first time in 4 days and gave it a matte coat with an airbrush. This is to protect the paint from any damages and my sweaty palms. In daylight, the figure looks a lot better in my opinion, and it just goes to show that lighting has a big difference on colors. More light also means that you can see more imperfections such as little bits, print lines, and breakage. But what is there to do than to learn from it? With the figure done, I still had to make the base, which I completely forgot about. Printing it barely fit on my 3D printer, and my first step was to give it a base coat of white. I tried using brushes, but I realized an airbrush would probably do a much better job. And just like the figure, I started detailing it by painting the balloons and the stars a different color, and I even painted the bottom part of the clouds different tints to make it look like it had shadow. I was inspired by these artworks, which were actually made by me. In those artworks, the clouds are shaded with more fantastical colors, and I try to replicate that in this model. Making the balloons were new and interesting to me, and I thought they printed pretty well until I waited overnight and the resin didn't really hold its shape properly. The type of resin I use is really durable and flexes easily so it doesn't break when you drop something, but it also means it doesn't hold its shape. But it was easily fixed, replacing it with a wire, or what you may call a paper clip. Then I waddled my way back outside and gave it another matte coat. Not everything has to be matte, however, so for some final touch-ups, I added some gloss onto the balloons and to the horns, as well as adding a little bit of gold accents. And with all that, the figure is finally done. Finally, looking at it as a whole piece, it looks wonderful, and I really dare you to try to find something online that matches what this looks like. I am aware that it could be a lot better with some better poses, painting, and detailing, but until I figure out what to do better, I'll just have to be satisfied with this. If you enjoy these figure making videos, please try to support it somehow, because I really don't think I get enough views for what I do, although I do sound a little cocky. And if you really like this figure for some reason, then it is downloadable for free, or you can also pay $1 if you really want to on some sites. And in this way, you can make the figure yourself with a resin printer if you really wanted to, although I would advise against it because assembling the figure might be very difficult. Obviously, I'll try to improve in the future and hopefully get some models that everyone can download and print easily. Thank you for watching, and I hope you were inspired to make some more fun.